What is an LLC and how are they used? What does LLC even stand for? A limited liability company, or an LLC as you might know it, has saved more people from financial ruin than any tax strategy or investment plan ever has. And here's why. An LLC is a legal structure that separates your personal life from your business life. When you form one, you're creating a new legal entity, or in reality, a legal person, one that can own property, open bank accounts, sign contracts, and even get sued without dragging you into the fight. So imagine this. You're running a healthy business, everything's fine, until one day it isn't. You get sick with something serious. You're in the hospital, the bills start coming in, and before you even know what's wrong, the numbers are already life-changing. If every property, every account, and every investment you own is titled in your personal name, then those medical creditors will go straight after them, and you might lose everything you've ever worked for. But if your business and investments are properly structured, held inside an LLC that stands separate from you, that will operate as a wall that resists those legal attacks. This separation is a benefit because it means that if something happens in your personal life, car accident, a personal guarantee, a medical claim, those personal creditors can't reach into your assets because they're safe inside your LLC. So what's the most misunderstood part of an LLC? It's misunderstood because what a limited liability company is it's a company that limits the liability of the members. So if you are an owner or member of an LLC and the LLC is held responsible for some action, you're not going to be personally liable. So that's called inside liability. So let's say an LLC owns a piece of property and there's a fire on that piece of property, and all of a sudden there's a massive liability because somebody dies in the fire. If you're a member of that LLC and you're not the manager and you're not the person that created the liability or the negligent person, and you're just an owner, then that limited liability will limit your liability for the fire and the accident and the potential claim. On the other end, we have outside liability. That's liability that you might get. So let's say you're in a car accident and now you're liable and you get a judgment against you in excess of the insurance that you have. Now they come looking and they see that you have an LLC. And they go, oh, that LLC has $1 million of value in it. We'd like to get it. The great thing about an LLC is that it also limits a creditor's access to your underlying investment. And it does that through what's called a charging order protection. So charging order protection, or COP, is a limitation on what a creditor's rights are with respect to breaking into an LLC. Now, charging order protection is different in every state. And I can say in some states it's extremely good, and in some states it's not so good. So you have to be careful. And an LLC is a great tool. It is a fantastic tool, but it is not magic. It does not solve all problems all the time. It does solve many problems though. And from an asset protection standpoint, we use them extensively to isolate and create different pockets where we can hold great assets, particularly risky assets. So for example, a risky asset might be a piece of real estate is a risky asset. So we want to put it in an LLC. We might have a second piece of real estate, a second investment real estate, and we want to segregate that from the first piece. So if the first piece has a problem, we're not going to jeopardize the second piece. So we would create a second LLC. We can do that as many times as we want. We can create 15 LLCs or 50 LLCs, and we are segregating out the risk of each of those assets, one from the other. Once we have those LLCs, well, they need to go someplace as well. And that's where we start using a higher level company called an asset management limited partnership. It's very similar to an LLC, and we use that as a holding company on top of the LLCs. So it can hold one LLC or it could hold 100 LLCs. It doesn't really matter. What it can also hold is it can hold liquid assets or investment assets, or what we call safe assets. Safe assets are things like cash and stocks and brokerage accounts and things that can't in and of themselves create a liability. So they're considered safe. The limited partnership can hold the safe assets directly, and then it can hold the interest in the risky assets through the various LLCs. And then on top of that, we would, in most cases, use an asset protection trust, and in most cases we're going to use a bridge trust, which is a specific form of asset protection trust, which is really a hybrid between a fully foreign asset protection trust and a simple domestic grantor trust. Very easy to use and manage, but very protective if we ever have to use it. So LLCs are fantastic tools, strongly recommend them. That's what an LLC can really do. It holds asset, it enters contracts, it creates a legal boundary between your business and your personal life. But the beauty of this structure is how accessible simple it is. You don't need to be a giant corporation or a millionaire to build that separation. And that's where people usually start asking the next question. Who can actually form an LLC? Well, the answer is anyone. Absolutely anyone can form an LLC. They're not expensive, they're simple, every state has a statute, and they're very easy to manage and run. In fact, the corporate formalities around an LLC have basically been suspended. So what used to be required, meetings and so forth for corporations, for LLCs is suspended. There's no actual requirement to do annual meetings or minutes, and that was done on purpose. That's so that they could be simple and easy to use. So it's very important that you do get some advice around it and make sure you get it set up in the right way. I have seen people do it themselves and simply get it wrong, not just in the creation of the LLCs, but more likely in the funding of the LLCs. So that's extremely important that you actually fund the right assets into the right LLCs. So forming an LLC is straightforward, and as you can see, almost anyone can do it. And that's part of what makes it such a powerful tool. But it's also why so many people get it wrong, because creating an LLC is easy, but maintaining its protection, not so much. I've seen perfectly good LLCs collapse in court, not because the law changed, but because the owner didn't follow the rules to keep it alive, or they funded it improperly and mixed the wrong assets. So before you assume your LLC will protect you, let's talk about the most common mistakes that destroy that protection and how to make sure yours actually holds up when tested. So here's what most people get wrong. They fund it improperly. And I will tell you, I just had a call. This particular person, she had an LLC and she put a piece of real estate in it. Okay, so far so good. Then she bought another piece of real estate and she put it in the same LLC. Okay, maybe not the worst thing in the world. Then she bought a business and it was quite an expensive business. And she decided, I already have an LLC, let me put that in there. And that's where things started to go off the rails, because she then proceeded to have a very serious litigation around the sale and purchase of this business. And she had also added other things into this LLC. She had cash and savings in the LLC. In other words, she just put everything into one LLC. So she got the message, oh, I should use an LLC. And she did set up an LLC. And then she proceeded to just put everything in the kitchen sink into that same LLC, including the riskiest things she possibly could put in there. The net effect is that now she's in a complete mess, because while her LLC might be drafted perfectly, she might have a great operating agreement, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant because she has funded it and she has mixed safe assets with risky assets. She has way overloaded it with far too much in value, so that even if the safe and risky assets weren't mixed in there, she has too much in a single LLC. This is by far the single most common mistake I see, just not understanding how to use it. So they set it up, they hear that's a good thing, but then they improperly fund it and they don't use it right, and it ends up creating more problems than it ever solves. So when you look at an LLC through the lens of asset protection, you start to see its real purpose. What you're doing is creating a legal boundary that keeps your personal world and your business world from colliding when life doesn't go exactly as planned. The truth is, most financial loss doesn't come from bad investments or market crashes. It comes from exposure and from having everything tied to your personal name. And LLC begins to change that. It allows your personal life to take a hit without dragging your business assets down with it, or vice versa. But an LLC isn't the entire system. It's just the foundation. It's the first layer of real asset protection. Once you understand how to use that layer correctly, you can start building a structure that stands up even when under pressure, whether that means pairing it with an asset management limited partnership or ultimately securing it with a bridge trust. If you're ready to create an LLC, or to see how your LLC fits into that bigger structure, or even if you want to make sure you already have what is actually protecting you the way it should, you'll find a link in the description to book your asset protection analysis. It's completely free, and it may be the most important conversation you ever have about keeping what you built. Remember, it's your own money.